My dad is from Donegal, a rural county in the Republic of Ireland, and my family have gone over every summer since I was born. Normally it's a fun, family-filled affair. All of my aunties and uncles and many cousins join us, and we spend a fortnight or so on the beach and enjoying the Mary of Dunglow festival. Back in 2014, my younger sister and younger cousin decided to head over for the festival without our parents. We decided to stay in the house where my granny and my father grew up, an old house hidden from the road and not too far from the town. I had never stayed over in the house before, but had heard a lot of stories from my older sister and my aunties about the house having spirits within it. I wasn't too worried. If there was anything, which I doubted, it would be related to me and wouldn't harm me. On the day we arrived, we were getting ready to go out for our first of many nights of the festival. I felt very uneasy in the house and couldn't put my finger on it. I had been here before many times, when my great auntie and uncle had stayed here before moving to a more modern home on the hill, but now it felt different. As I got dressed and put on my makeup, I felt watched. I can't describe it in any other way than saying I felt as though someone was right at my shoulder, breathing down my neck. I continuously felt like I could see something out of the corner of my eye, but when I turned, there was nothing there. We came home from our night out at about 2 a.m. and had decided for the holiday to all stay in the same room, my sister and cousin in the double bed and me on a mattress beside the chest of drawers. The night was one of the strangest nights of my life. I kept waking up, shivering with cold, then would fall back asleep only to wake later, sweating and overheated. One of the times I woke up, I looked up at the bed and saw that my cousin and sister were both wide awake. In the morning we laughed it off, but throughout the holiday the same thing would happen. We would move around the house, feeling watched. We would wake up at the exact same time every night, and on one occasion I went into the kitchen to find all the chairs pulled out from the table, left askew. I don't know why, but I managed not to be too afraid. I told myself it was an old house, that's why the fire didn't help the cold. The footsteps were just the creaking walls and the feeling of being watched. I must have been over-teared from the bad night's sleep. However, when the festival was over, things took a turn for the worse, and I could no longer convince myself there was nothing going on. One night I woke up, wide awake at 3 a.m. like so many nights before, but this time I heard the sound of whistles. It can't be a tin whistle, I told myself. It's just my sister or cousin breathing. But then it began to move more melodically. A tune. I tried to close my eyes and pretend it wasn't happening until I fell asleep. In the morning, my cousin told me that she had woken up in the night and heard tin whistles. I asked her not to tell my sister. The next night, I woke up again by a noise. It sounded like a saw, or wood against wood, some sort of friction. I turned my head to the chest of drawers close to me and saw the copper handle swinging. Something had been opening and shutting the drawer to wake me up. I was petrified and tried to sleep. Finally, there came a night when I lay my head down on the mattress and felt it move, jolting, as if someone had pushed my mattress with me on it across the way towards the chest of drawers. I sat up and saw how much space there was between me and the chest of drawers, a good few inches. I laid back down and told myself it wasn't happening. A few minutes later, I felt the push again. I sat up and instantly lay back down again. My mattress was pushed right up against the chest of drawers. I felt as though whatever was in the house was isolating me and trying hard to get me to talk about it to my family, but I didn't want to scare them. Finally, it was all too much for me and I booked it to the ferry back home 4 days earlier than I was meant to return. I felt terrible leaving my sister and cousin, but I couldn't stand it anymore. On the last night I spent there, I woke up 3 a.m. in the morning and felt as though there was someone outside my room. I could hear incredibly quiet whispers, almost like a vibration outside the bedroom door, as if two people were discussing something. At this point I was angry. They had ruined my holiday, so instead in my head I said, "If you're going to say something, just say it. Stop whispering." There was silence, and then, Very audibly, I hear the word, "Girls." I lay there, absolutely terrified, and just a few moments later my cousin woke up. I didn't tell her what had happened. I went home that morning, but weeks later at a big family dinner I was speaking to my cousin, and she revealed, like me, she had experienced a lot of things that she didn't tell me because she didn't want to upset me. We told each other what we had been keeping to ourselves, and our experiences were very similar. My aunties chipped in too and told us frightening stories about the house and the spirits. My cousin and I discovered we had both woken up to the sound of bicycle bells from outside in the lane. She also said she felt as though there was a woman in the house called Nance, but she wasn't related to us. My other cousin then admitted that one night she slept over and saw a woman in her room, standing at the mantelpiece, facing away. My aunties told us that Nance was our great-grandmother's friend who would often visit the house, riding down the lane on her bicycle. It all sounds unbelievable, to be honest. I wouldn't have believed it had it not happened to me. Needless to say, I shall not be staying in the old house this year, or ever again for that matter. I just got home from a 2-night stay in Castle Leslie in Monaghan. I was aware that there was reported hauntings prior to going, but didn't want to read any stories before I went, and my wife was totally unaware of any stories relating to the castle. We stayed in Norman's room and a series of events happened between 1 a.m. and first light, which would have been around 5 or 6 a.m.-ish. The night in question was Monday night to Tuesday morning, the 4th and 5th of April 2016. First, we returned to the room around 12 a.m., and we both were very tired after the drive up from Wexford. I was awoken and could feel a presence in the room, and I could make out the figure of a man sitting in the chair next to the bed. The hair was standing on the back of my neck, and I couldn't move. I then saw what I can only describe as a mist or cloud over the right-hand side of the bed. I had a restless night of dreams. One of those was a dream of being in the bed, and the others which I don't recall. It was very warm in the room, and I was too scared to move or even hang my leg outside the covers. In the morning, my bed confirmed she too had a night of vivid dreams and awoke to see a cloud of mist at the foot of the bed. No windows in the room were open. I was glad to see the morning and went to the bathroom. Our room overlooked the vast gardens and lake, and whilst looking out over the lake, it looked like a wave or wall of water around 10 feet was moving across very slowly. My wife confirmed the same, but by the time I got my camera to take a picture, it had disappeared. The following night, we told the night porter our experience, and he mentioned that there was reports of the bed being haunted and offered to move us into another room. Nothing like this has happened before, and I would say I was open-minded, yet skeptical. We had a sound sleep on the Tuesday night with the help of a different set of spirits. I can't explain what we saw, but we will return there one day. We just won't be staying in Norman's room. I'm currently 24 years old, but since I can remember, I've always had bad luck and strange things happening to me. I would just like to say my mother told me she had to get a priest to bless her because of an incident with a Ouija board when she was younger. Maybe this thing she conjured had latched onto me somehow. I also had just learned she is seeing the same figure as me. Anyways, I'd like to start with my childhood. I was raised in a violent and abusive environment, which included a lot of trauma on my behalf. My father and best friend committed suicide when I was very young. I believe this thing disguised itself as my father once and showed itself to me also. I do believe that demons, or whatever they are attracted to broken people and the such, from what I have read. When I was around 12 or so, I was very much into occult things and had a lot of occult symbols all over my room, and I had practiced a few rituals, stupidly enough. One night I was awoke by a dark shadow figure standing at the bottom of my bed, and it was trying to pull away my blanket. I couldn't do anything about it. I felt completely powerless to it. This has been happening to me ever since. It has appeared as a couple. It has appeared just at my door, reaching around from behind it, opening it slowly. I also heard unexplainable scratching in my built-in wardrobe. When I checked, there were scratch marks all over the inside of the door, like claw marks or fingernails, and they were deep. Ever since that night, I have struggled with addictions and a voice in my head that takes over sometimes, urging me to do bad things. It has been really bad these past few weeks. I have also become on and off depressed. This figure has never left. Every so often it will appear again over the years here and there, but not until around this time last year. I had a bad breakup with my partner of 8 years. I got depressed again and got into the occult once more. I stupidly was present when someone summoned a demon, and during this I was in an extremely bad place. Then all of a sudden this same shadow I seen when I was younger would appear every single night. I was sleeping on the sofa for a good month and it would appear over the top of me on the wall. It would appear on the walls opposite me. Even when I got to lie down on the bed, it would still be there, standing over me. The feeling that someone was there was really immense when I would stay up all night. The strange noises would come back and electrical appliances would turn off and on. They wouldn't even be plugged in. I couldn't explain it whatsoever. Ever since this, I've had lots of bad luck, i.e. I've lost nearly every job I've had due to circumstances I can't control, leading to financial issues. I've been extremely depressed and even have had suicidal thoughts which have been very prominent this past while. I've lost loved ones. My addictions are really bad now. I've had multiple injuries, and I've changed from a very nice outgoing guy to a very quiet kind of loner type, and I've become a very angry person inside. I've signed myself in for some counseling because whatever this thing is, it's winning, and it's making my life unbearable. I do believe it's been with me on and off since I was a child. I just think it makes itself extremely known when I'm at my weakest moments. I thought I would submit this so I could see what other people say and think. Thank you ahead of time. My story began a long time ago. I have always picked up on things others have not. For a few years, the haunting I had experienced seemed to have stopped. However, in the last couple of months, things have started again. It started shortly after I began university. I'm staying with a relative in a very old house that was built in the late 19th century. From the second I moved in, I felt slightly uneasy in my room despite there being plenty of religious objects in the room. I began to wake up in the middle of the night, and I would see a tall, hooded figure with red eyes standing at the foot of my bed in front of the wardrobe. I brushed it off as my imagination. Since then, things have only gotten worse. I constantly feel like I'm being watched. Things around my bedroom move unexplainably. For over a month now, I have been unable to sleep. I'm lucky if I get to sleep before 4 in the morning, but when I do, I have vivid and horrific nightmares and can feel something breathing on me during the night. As I desperately try to fall asleep at night, I often get so scared I have to keep the light on. I hear tapping coming from inside my wardrobe and footsteps in my room when I'm all alone. A couple of weeks ago, I went to visit my grandmother's grave when it was near dark and very foggy. I felt very scared, which was very strange as I usually get peace from being at the grave. As I was leaving, I cut through the middle of the graveyard when I noticed something very odd. I saw 3 hooded shapes moving very quickly up the graveyard aisle. At first, I thought they were teenagers on bikes, but I was very close to where they were, and I heard absolutely no noise. They were completely silent. Needless to say, I was very spooked by this and got out of there very quickly. Since this had started happening, I have not felt like myself. I don't feel normal. The only thing I am confident in is that this entity that has invaded my life is not a good one. I don't like not being able to feel safe in my own room. I hate feeling it watching me, especially at night when things are at its peak. Is it possible that this thing that is following me is a demon? I would really like some advice on this. I don't know what to do. I have always been interested in the paranormal and ghosts, but I had never really thought that I would have my own experience. In January of this year, I experienced a rather unsettling occurrence in the house that I rented at the time with my best friend. It was a renovated house, but would have dated back to around the 1950s, maybe a little bit earlier. Myself and my friend Rachel were quite happy with this house. I did experience some strange feelings of unease in my bedroom over the year I was there, and always oddly felt it coming from the same corner of my room. I have to admit I spent many a night with my bedside lamp on, but one event in particular still makes me feel uneasy. One evening I was standing in the kitchen. Our living room and kitchen were one room. My bedroom was the only other room on the ground floor, and the door that led into the living room kitchen was beside the stairs. I've been making myself some tea, and from the corner of my eye, seen Rachel come into the room. I turned to ask her if she wanted anything, and was more than a little shocked to find she wasn't there. I thought she was playing games with me, so went to check my room and the stairs, which would have taken me a few seconds. If anyone was running or hiding, they wouldn't have a lot of time to do so. She wasn't there. I was convinced I had seen her. I was even half expecting her to still laugh, and yet nothing. I called her mobile phone only to hear it ringing from her room, upstairs and down a little hallway, where she answered it sleepily and wondered what was going on. I explained what had happened, and of course she thought I was just trying to wind her up. I wasn't. I told her I was serious, and of course that made us both freak out a little. Not really a little, a lot. I know that people say, oh, it was just your eyes or mind playing tricks on you, but something about this seemed different. I was convinced she was there, and when she disappeared, my stomach sort of dropped because I think I sensed something wasn't quite right. After the experience in the kitchen, Rachel told me that she experienced sleep paralysis more in this house than she had in our previous two properties combined. She had suffered from sleep paralysis since her early teens, and in various quite unsettling ways. Now, I know most people would say that she could just be saying this to go along with the story, but Rachel is not that kind of person. She is logical and incredibly level-headed. To think something strangely paranormal and unexplained is happening to her in equal measures scares and annoys her because she can't find a logical explanation for it. I feel that our house may have been haunted not by something angry and malevolent, but someone who was a little unsettled at us being there, and so we felt unsettled and uneasy being there at times ourselves. I wouldn't outright claim that I have seen a ghost, because I genuinely don't know, but I have read about people claiming ghosts taking the shapes of their loved ones and friends, and thought maybe this could have been the same thing. So this has taken place since I was born. When I was a few weeks old, orbs and vortexes started showing up all around me. Then when I was only 2 years old, I saw my first ghost. It really scared me, and I can still remember it. Then we moved to a new house. The activity stopped for a few years, but then when I was about 8 years old, I started seeing ghosts again. I saw a shadow ghost of a woman in a graveyard, and she was staring at me, but I wasn't scared of her. Nothing really happened after that until I was about 12 years old when a ghost of a little boy showed up at my house. My room was being done up so there were no curtains up and you could see outside. I had just gotten into bed when I turned over and looked at the window, and there was a little boy staring in the window at me. It scared me. I pulled the covers over my head and hoped he would go away. I fell asleep, but I woke up when my parents came into my room to hang up the curtains. I slowly looked over at my window, and the little boy was gone. I quickly looked around my room just to make sure he wasn't there, and he was gone. When I turned 16, ghosts started showing up again. I would hear whispering and things being moved around. One night I was in the sitting room alone when suddenly I could feel a presence in the room with me. I felt like I was being watched. Then it threw my jumper from one corner of the couch over to the other side of the couch. I was scared, but I wouldn't turn around to see what was there. Soon after that, the presence left the room. Things started getting really weird now. I was lying on my bed after coming home from school when I suddenly felt a hand on my waist. I felt like I was being comforted, but I wasn't afraid, and I had the most vivid dream of this guy and this girl. They were lying on a bed kissing and laughing, but the girl in the dream looked exactly like me, which kind of freaked me out a little. When I woke up, there was nothing there, so I just thought it was my imagination. A few weeks later, the guy that was in my dream showed me how he died in another dream. He died in a car wreck. I jumped up out of bed and I noticed that my head was hurting me. I put my hand up and felt a lump like I hit my head. It really scared me because the guy in my dream died from a head injury. Just recently, a ghost of a woman showed up in our shed. I don't know who she is, but she is still there. Why do ghosts keep showing up at my house? I never told my parents any of this because I don't want to scare them. Has this happened to anyone else? The following is just one of the many supernatural events that I've experienced in recent years while spending time in Ireland. As I am from the inner city area in England, I don't really get a chance to escape the hustle and bustle of city life very often, so I find that when I go to Ireland to visit family and friends, and generally escape, I finally get to unwind and enjoy being out in the countryside, surrounded by nature, and I'm pretty sure that makes me more sensitive to experiencing strange events. It was summer 2012. My then boyfriend, now husband, and I were staying at a house that belonged to a family friend. He had spent a lot of time there as a child, and it is a lovely looking old house overlooking the sea, very dark inside but comfortable, and I didn't feel uneasy overall, but I disliked the bathroom and a lot of the paintings and ornaments oddly placed around the house. For example, there was a statue of the Virgin Mary on top of the wardrobe in the double room which faced the entry to the bedroom, which just seemed odd to me, but each room had religious statues and paintings dotted around in odd arrangements. The arrangements I disliked, not the statues. After our first night there, we awoke to all the doors inside the house open. I noted this as I have a little thing about doors being closed, and I obviously immediately noticed our bedroom door open from waking up that morning. However, on inspection, a lot of the doors were easily unlatched, and I attributed it to being an old house, but it did just give you a spooky feeling. Another day, in the shower, I noticed through the steamed up glass of the shower barrier what looked like a dark figure standing in front of the window. I wiped the glass to see if my boyfriend was there, but no one was. This really creeped me out as the bathroom was the one room I felt most comfortable in, and now always felt watched and a feeling of dread. Other little things happened, but the one thing that surprised me the most, yet also slightly amused me, was the instant on the second night after the door opening incidents. We were both tired and ready for bed, so I started closing down and noticed the second spare bedroom's door was ajar, and something unusual caught my eye. The two single beds each had a corner of the covers pulled back neatly as if they were being used. They certainly hadn't been like that the day before, and my boyfriend said he hadn't done that, and they were probably like that when we came. No one else had been there in the house the week we were there, and we were responsible for keeping the house whilst there. No cleaner, etc. We went to sleep in the double room and slept soundly. Again in the morning, our bedroom door was open, but what surprised me, and I have to admit, at the time, chilled me instantly, was that the statue of Mary on the wardrobe was staring down at me and not facing the door as she originally was. Without taking my eyes away, I reached for my glasses just to be sure, and sure enough, the statue was indeed facing me. As my boyfriend stirred, I turned and nudged him a bit to wake him up and pointed it out, but as I looked back, it was facing the door again, as if to make me look like a complete idiot. I didn't mention it to my boyfriend until the journey home. He then reeled off a list of things he had seen but didn't want to scare me or talk about while we were there. He had seen the dark figure in the bathroom, and he agreed the sheets in the spare room were not like that when we arrived. He said he had woken to the sound of a man whispering his name 2 nights in a row with no one to be seen. He had a number of items go missing and turn up in their original places later, as I had experienced with a single shoe. Now, he doesn't scare easily, but I'm a wuss at times, and we sat telling our spooky story to his mom a few nights later, and she told of her experiences of the house. It was originally owned by her mother's friend, an elderly woman, and as a child she reports seeing a completely black figure, a man with no face, starting to run toward her one day as she walked up the stony driveway that led to the house on an errand for her mother. She turned and ran back home, and her father marched around, wanting to know what man had scared his daughter, and no one could explain who the mysterious black faceless man was. Although other local people over the years revealed they had seen variations of the same at the house, such as a headless black figure, and another said they had seen a black figure with glowing red eyes. She also said that, in ways many elderly people in Ireland still are, the household has always been a religious one, and it would not have been acceptable for an unmarried couple to sleep in the same bed as we did. We are both Catholic, and this did make me smile a bit that maybe the statue of the Virgin Mary turned towards me was the disapproval of a resident spirit, similar to the single beds left turned out for us as a hint to adhere to tradition. Creepy still now, but looking back, I didn't feel threatened by those events, just a bit chilled. I think the dark figure is someone separate altogether though, as in the bathroom I've always had the sense of urgency to hurry up and get out. I've since stayed at that house again, maybe a year later, and the door is still open, and I still felt uneasy in the bathroom, but neither of us have seen the dark figure in the bathroom since our first visit. I'm a 25-year-old Australian who traveled around Europe last year with my younger sister, 20 years old, who for this story I will just call Kay. Kay and I had been traveling for 3 months by ourselves with friends for some parts. Kay and I are both interested in the supernatural, so on our adventures we went on a few ghost tours here and there, explored the underground Edinburgh vaults, Paris catacombs, and old, supposedly haunted castles. While all these activities were super fun and educational, we never had one creepy or unexplained experience. The creepy and unexplained didn't come until the last few days of our trip, when we weren't looking for or expecting it. The first experience took place in early morning Dublin, before sunrise. At this stage of the trip, Kay and I were traveling just the two of us, and we were running quite low on money. We had a day trip booked to take us out to see some castles and other sights of Ireland. We had been instructed via email to meet up with our tour group at Dublin train station at 6:30 a.m. Low on money and not wanting to pay for a taxi, Kay and I decided to get up extra early and walk to the train station. According to the concierge at the hotel, it would take us roughly 30 minutes to walk there, so we set off at 5:40 a.m. just to be safe. Being the eldest sibling, I felt responsible for Kay's safety, so I was always very aware of our surroundings. As we were walking in the dark to the train station, the streets were still very quiet at this time of morning. We saw a few people here and there, but not enough to feel completely comfortable, 2 girls walking alone. Kay and I had been walking for about 20 minutes when I noticed the shadow of a person approaching us on the sidewalk. I looked behind me to see if we were dealing with someone friendly or not, but nobody was there, besides a couple walking on the opposite side of the street and in the opposite direction to us. When I turned forward, the third shadow was still there. This time Kay turned around to look behind us, and when turning back, she asked me, "Did you just look behind us because of that shadow?" To which I responded, "You see it too?" We weren't freaked out yet. I suggested that it may have just been an optical illusion, like perhaps one of us was creating 2 shadows due to the angle of the sidewalk or something. So we tried to prove that theory by putting our arms straight up in the air and waving them around while watching the 3 shadows. When we did this, Only 2 of the shadows copied our movements. The third simply kept walking alongside of ours, casually. Kay and I both began laughing, a nervous kind of laughter. We spent the rest of the walk looking behind us, trying to catch something or someone following us, but we never saw anybody, and the shadow walked with us the entire way to the train station until it was too bright to see any of the 3 shadows anymore. Personally, I'd like to think that perhaps it was a guardian of some sort. Kay and I really should have got a taxi. It wasn't smart for the 2 of us to be walking around in the dark in this place we barely knew. So maybe the shadow was trying to make sure that we arrived at our destination safely. The second unexplained moment happened a few days later back in London. Kay and I were exhausted and had gone to bed early in our hotel room. We had a single bed each with a small space in between. We were watching a movie on television. I rolled over first and told Kay I was going to sleep. Maybe 5 seconds later, I felt heavy pressure on the end of my bed, just as if someone had sat on it. The bed even dipped and I had to pull my feet up. Assuming it was Kay, I didn't even bother turning over. I just asked her what the hell she was doing. That's when I heard Kay ask from her bed what I was talking about. I spun around and sat up immediately. There was nothing on the end of my bed, and it was clear that Kay had not moved from her position, as the chips she had been eating were still resting on her stomach. I told Kay that someone had totally just sat on my bed, and we both did the nervous laughter again, but I wasn't really scared. Less than 5 minutes later, I rolled over and went to sleep again, with no more occurrences. Safe to say, we came back home with a few fun stories to tell. I've had my fair share of spirits around me. I've seen spirits all my life and am somewhat sensitive to them. When I was 16, I believe I was attacked by an incubus. It wasn't until I read some stories on this website did I figure out what really happened to me. This story is true. All of this happened to me. I do believe in ghosts. They do scare me, but they also fascinate me. It all started one night. I had just climbed into bed and was laying on my side ready to go to sleep. I was only lying down for a few seconds when my whole body became paralyzed and I felt really weird and my ears were ringing. I was totally unaware of my surroundings when this was happening to me. I could see this black figure of a man walking towards my bed. My heart started to race and I thought I was going to have a heart attack because my heart was beating so fast. As he came closer, I started to feel really warm and kind of turned on. I was so scared. When he was standing beside me, he started to lift up the blankets and started to touch me. That's when I became really scared. I tried to call for help, but I couldn't. It started to feel me all over, and that's when I blanked out. When I woke up the next morning, I couldn't understand what had happened. I didn't tell anyone and just brushed it off. Sometime later that week, when I tried to fall asleep one night, I heard this man whisper something in my ear. I jumped up and looked around, but no one was there. I don't know what he whispered to me. I could never make it out. A few weeks later, the whispering returned when I tried to sleep, but I still couldn't hear what the guy was saying. It went away for a while, but then it returned. The whispering continued, but I just ignored it. When I came home from school one day, I felt really sleepy, so I decided to have a nap. As I lay on my bed, I felt something lie beside me and put its arm around my waist. I didn't feel scared at all. I actually felt incredibly safe. I had this really vivid dream about this incredibly hot guy with this girl who looked like me, and we were lying in bed together and he had his arm around my waist. We were laughing and joking and we looked really happy, like we were in love. When I woke up, there was no one there, so I thought it was a friendly ghost and didn't think much of it. I didn't think much of the dream either, as I don't dream that much. Later that week, I was feeling kind of tired, so I decided to have a nap. I was only asleep for a few minutes when I woke up to this feeling of intercourse. I woke up and was feeling drowsy, like I was drugged. I looked around, but nothing was there, and that's when I felt drowsy and fell back asleep. I woke up a few minutes later and felt something kissing me, but I couldn't see anything yet again. I felt really drowsy and fell back to sleep. When I woke up, I thought it was my imagination. The spirit went away for a while but recently came back, but I now know what it is after constantly surfing the internet. I found this website and read a few stories about an incubus, which really fascinates me. I finally learned what was happening to me. The whispering returned at night when I tried to sleep. I started hearing noises in my bedroom like things being moved around and being played with. It really freaked me out, so I started going to bed later than usual, hoping that I could go to bed in peace. Sometimes I would wake up in the morning and still feel tired, like I wasn't getting enough sleep at night. This continued for months until one night I was asleep and was woken up by something. As I opened my eyes, I saw this black figure lying beside me in bed. I couldn't move and I was paralyzed, but I felt really weird like the night that I was first attacked. I could make out some of his features. His eyes were dark, but I couldn't see the whites of his eyes. He had a nose and a mouth and he looked human to me, except that everything about him was black like a demon. He said something to me, but I couldn't make it out. I asked if I could go back to sleep, but he just laughed at me like he was surprised that I wasn't afraid of him. He wanted to hold me, but I said no and he stopped. After that, I fell asleep. I was surprised that my incubus showed himself to me, but I'm not scared of him at all now. When my incubus is in my house, he creates this ticking noise like a clock, only faster, like he is letting me know he is there. He also makes my attic creak like mad when he's around. Sometimes it's really loud that it makes me jump. My incubus is like my protector. He follows me everywhere like he is watching out for me. I like him being around and I don't mind that he follows me. I feel really safe when he's around. He is really sweet and caring and listens to me and has never hurt me. I really care about him as well, and when he leaves for a while, I feel like my best friend is missing. He has been with me for 4 years as I am now 20. Now don't tell me that incubus are dangerous and can kill you or I would be dead by now. And don't tell me to get rid of him. I've heard it all before and it really annoys me. My incubus, Andrew, is not dangerous. He is loving and I really care about him. When I was depressed, he made me better. I was happy again thanks to Andrew. I know he will never hurt me. I feel like I've known him before. I don't know where from. He told me I was his girlfriend back in the 1900s and that he wanted to marry me in a past life. What do you think? Could that be possible? For the past 3 or 4 years, I've been experiencing people that are dead. I did experience this when I was younger, but it had stopped for a while. Then it all happened again. On the year I was born, my father's brother named Eugene died in a car crash. Sadly, his ribs and lungs got crushed and died from having no air. I never saw him when I was younger, but around 2006, I started seeing him. Whenever I did see him, he would just be standing there, smiling at me. But one day, something a little different happened. I was sitting in my room with my mom and dad, and we were watching a movie. My uncle Eugene came into the sitting room and sat on the couch beside my father. My dad couldn't see him, but I could. He turned to my father and rubbed his arm. My dad had this shocked expression on his face because he could feel something rubbing his arm. When I saw his face, I told him it was Eugene, but then Eugene started to make me cry because he was mad that I had told my father that it was him. And then later on that night, Eugene came into my room. He wasn't very happy, but I did say sorry, which made him smile. Ever since that day, my uncle has been here and there around me. I always remember seeing him when I'm in certain situations. Sometimes, though, I don't see Eugene. I see shadows. Shadows of people I don't think I know. Sometimes the shadows are very faded, but sometimes they're beside me, and they're very full-looking. I remember when I was about 8, I saw this small shadow. It looked to be a little boy. I don't ever remember having a little boy in my family die, so I started to get a bit scared. One time I saw the little boy's shadow and my uncle Eugene standing beside each other. Eugene seemed happy when the boy was there, so I thought I should be happy. At night from that day, I've seen the boy's shadow, and I could always feel him sitting on my bed, staring at me. I always thought Eugene sent him there to take care of me when Eugene couldn't, but then things started to change. This little boy was getting into my dreams. He always scared me sometimes for no reason, and I always felt as if though he was trying to warn me. After a year after all these nightmares, my mother's brother, Peter, died. This is when I got the thought of the little boy's warnings. Since Peter died, the little boy never came to see me. I've never seen my Uncle Peter's ghost until his first anniversary of being dead. When I did see him, he was standing behind my mom, and he put his hand over her shoulder. She started to cry and told my grandmother that she could feel him touching her. I went up to her and told him that it was him, but she didn't believe me because I was only young. But then Peter bent down to me and smiled. I remember this because he went to kiss me but didn't because he had seen his two younger sisters and wanted to go beside them. Ever since that day I've seen Peter, and he has always helped me in some way when I wasn't happy or I was in bother. In about 2011 or 12, I started boxing. I started it because my father and his two younger brothers, including Eugene, did it, and seemingly it was in the blood that we were good boxers. Turns out that every time I fought in a club, a coach would go up to my dad and say that I have a special way of fighting. My father was my coach, so he always took pride in these compliments. One day I was fighting in a big tournament. It was an Ulster tournament. Every time before I go to fight, I always pray to my two uncles, Peter and Eugene. When I went up into the ring, I could have sworn I heard my Uncle Eugene, but I never paid attention to it. As the bell went for the first round to start, I remember just freezing in the ring because my Uncle Eugene was in the ring in front of me wearing boxing gloves. I remember him winking at me and then standing beside me. Every time my opponent went to hit, my uncle would do a move and I would copy him. At the end of my 3 rounds, I won my fight thanks to my uncle's advice. Last year in 2013, at around November-December time, my mother took a video of my little brother and sister dancing. In this video, white things started to fly around, and they were in front of the camera. Some were kind of faded while the rest weren't. In this video, my brother and sister go onto their knees and pretend to play guitar. As this was going on, the door behind my brother, which leads into a bathroom, started to open slowly. After about 6 seconds, the door started to close, but I noticed someone in the bathroom moving, which was unusual because it was only my mother and the 2 kids in the room. About a week later or 2, my brother sat on my dad's chair facing a painting of my Uncle Eugene. He then said to my mother, "Mommy, I miss Uncle Eugene. He was a very nice man. Will I ever see him again?" Keep in mind, my brother never met Eugene, for he wasn't born at this time. A few minutes later, my brother then said to my mom, "Mommy, I miss him. I'm going to cry." Then he burst into tears. My mother was very scared, for she couldn't understand how he knew Eugene. A few days later, my brother then started taking pictures on his iPod. My father was babysitting him and was reading the newspaper. While he was reading, my brother called him in and said, "Look at the blue Peter I took a picture of." If you don't know what a blue Peter is, then I'll tell you. It's a shadow person. Now, nobody told my brother what a blue Peter was, so we didn't know how he knew this. My father went and looked at the picture my brother wanted to show him. On this picture was a shadow in thin air shaped as a person. My father was very scared, so he showed my mother. Recently in school, I have not been doing very well, but my Uncle Peter had been there for me because my mother told me to pray to him. I thought it was weird to pray to him, but I did it anyway, and within a day he was there in school with me. Recently I have been in a fight with a girl. One day at lunch in school, I saw Peter and Eugene together looking at this girl. They both looked angry at her. This is when I knew that my mother was right about praying to them. A few days later, my brother said something, but I didn't know about it until yesterday, when my cousin came up. My brother sat on her knee and said to her, "You see that painting on the wall? That is my Uncle Eugene. He's my daddy's brother. Did you know he died in a car crash because he was drinking and he hit another car?" Me and my mother and dad were really freaked out that he knew this because no one told him how Eugene died. My cousin asked him how he knew this. My brother replied saying, "The fairies from up above told me." My brother pointed towards the sky when he said this. Then we all caught on that he was talking about angels. Later on that night, we put him in bed. I was sitting with my dad at the dinner table and we started talking about it. My father was upset because since my brother started talking about Eugene, he missed him a lot. He said to me that he would love just to at least see him one more time. At that moment, I was going to tell him I could see him, but I didn't because I knew it just wasn't the right time. As my father was telling me how much he missed Eugene was sitting at the table. He was smiling at my father and then turned to me and smiled. He seemed happy that my father was talking about him. That is recently what happened so far in my life with my dead relatives. It would appear that me and my brother have a gift.